On the night of June 27, 1980, a passenger plane was flying over the Mediterranean Sea. 81 people were on board. 77 passengers, 4 crew. 16 of them were children. An hour into the flight, without a single warning, the plane simply broke apart in the sky and fell into the sea. Everyone died. That alone would be a tragedy. But it's not why we're here. We're here because of what happened next. Because for the next 30 years, the most powerful institutions in Italy would lie, hide evidence, and, some believe, kill the people who knew the truth. This is the story of Flight 870. And the question at the center of it is simple. What could possibly be worth covering up? For 30 years, it was a routine domestic flight, Bologna to Palermo, a small Italian airline called Itavia. The plane was a McDonnell Douglas DC-9, a workhorse, nothing unusual. The people on board were ordinary Italians, going home, going on holiday, going to see family, families with children. It took off in the evening, climbed to its cruising altitude, and for about an hour, everything was completely normal. The last words from the cockpit were routine. The pilots were calm. There was no distress call, no warning, no sign that anything was wrong. And then, at 8:59 p.m., the plane vanished from the radar screens. Just gone. One moment a steady signal, the next, nothing. The plane had broken apart at 25,000 feet and dropped into the sea between 2 small islands, Ponza and a tiny place called Ustica. By dawn the next morning, rescue boats found what they were dreading: wreckage and bodies floating in the open sea. There were no survivors. There was never any hope of survivors. And immediately, the question everyone asked was the obvious one. Why did a perfectly normal plane suddenly fall out of the sky? The Italian authorities had an answer ready almost immediately. They said it was structural failure. The old plane had simply come apart. Case closed. There was just one problem with that explanation. Almost nothing about it was true, because the families of the victims didn't accept it, and neither did a handful of investigators and journalists who started looking closely at the wreckage that was recovered. And what they found didn't match the official story at all. The damage to the aircraft didn't look like a plane that had fallen apart from old age. It looked like a plane that had been hit by something, an explosion, but not necessarily from inside. And here is where the story stops being an accident and becomes something much darker. That stretch of the Mediterranean, in 1980, was one of the most militarily active places in the world. It was the height of the Cold War. NATO forces, American forces, and others operated there constantly. And Libya, ruled by Colonel Gaddafi, was right across the water, a major target of Western intelligence. So ask yourself this: if a civilian plane full of families flew into the middle of a secret military operation that night, who would ever admit it? Over the years, as more evidence came out, a theory took shape, and it was supported by radar data, by the pattern of the wreckage, and eventually by the Italian courts themselves. The theory is this: that night, there may have been a battle in the sky. Military jets, and the leading accounts point to a NATO operation, may have been trying to intercept a Libyan aircraft, possibly one carrying Gaddafi himself, hidden in the air traffic. And in the chaos, a missile meant for a military target hit a civilian airliner instead. I want to be very careful here, because this matters. Whose missile it was has never been officially confirmed. Over the decades, different accounts have blamed the French, the Americans, NATO broadly, even others. A former Italian prime minister publicly accused a French jet and demanded answers. France has never admitted anything, but here is what is no longer just a theory. In 2013, Italy's highest criminal court ruled that there was, in their words, abundantly clear evidence that Flight 870 was brought down by a missile, not old age, not metal fatigue, a missile. The official explanation was a lie. The only question left was, who told it and why? And this is the part of the story that most people outside Italy have never heard, because the cover-up wasn't passive. It wasn't just officials staying quiet. According to a massive judicial investigation, it was active, deliberate, and it came from inside the Italian military itself. In 1999, after nearly 2 decades of work, an Italian judge named Rosario Priore produced a report that ran to over 5,000 pages. His conclusion was damning. The plane had most likely been brought down in a missile incident, and there had been a criminal cover-up by the Italian military and security services. Radar evidence went missing. Records were altered or destroyed. Officers gave testimony that didn't add up. The very people who were supposed to find the truth appeared to be working to bury it. And then there are the deaths. Because as the investigation dragged on through the 1980s and 90s, something deeply disturbing happened to the people connected to the case. A number of them. Military men, radar operators, people who had been on duty that night, or who were about to testify, began to die. In 1988, 2 Italian Air Force pilots who had been on duty the night of the crash were killed in an air show disaster. They were due to testify before the investigation. Just 1 week later, a radar operator was shot dead. Another died in a car accident. A Secret Service officer who had been on duty that night died in a plane crash before he could be questioned. Over the years, a chain of people tied to the case met sudden, violent, or unexplained ends. Now, I have to be honest with you, because this channel is about the truth, not just a good story. Not every one of these deaths has been proven to be murder. Some may genuinely have been accidents. People die, coincidences happen, but ask yourself, how many convenient coincidences does it take before coincidence stops being the explanation? The Italian investigators themselves found the pattern impossible to ignore, and to this day, many in Italy are convinced that people were silenced to protect whatever happened in the sky that night. And there's one more casualty of that night that almost no one remembers: the airline itself. Itavia, the small company that operated the flight, was destroyed by it. The official story, the lie, was that their plane had failed. That blamed the disaster on the airline. Itavia collapsed. The company was ruined, accused of flying an unsafe aircraft, when the truth was that one of its planes had most likely flown into a war zone it was never told about. Decades later, Italian courts ordered the state to pay damages, acknowledging that the government's own failures and cover-up had destroyed the company and denied the families the truth. It was, in a sense, an admission. The state had lied, and the state was finally being held to account, at least with money. Today, if you go to Bologna, the city where Flight 870 took off and never returned, you can visit a museum, and at the center of it is the actual wreckage of the plane, painstakingly recovered from the bottom of the sea and pieced back together. Around it hang 81 lights, pulsing softly, one for each person who died. It is one of the most haunting memorials in Italy, and it exists because the families refused to let the story be buried, even when the people who could have told the truth kept dying and the records kept vanishing. Here is why Ustica matters and why it belongs in this record. 81 ordinary people died in the sky. That was, perhaps, a terrible accident of war, but what came after was not an accident. The lie was a choice. The missing evidence was a choice. The silence, and whatever caused those convenient deaths, was a choice. A court has confirmed the missile. A judge has confirmed the cover-up. And yet, more than 40 years later, no one has ever been convicted. No government has fully admitted what happened. The truth is known and still, officially, hidden. Because the darkest moments in history are almost never the ones nobody understands. They're the ones plenty of people understand completely and decide, for reasons of their own, that you are better off not knowing. 81 lights still glow in a quiet room in Bologna. The plane that was never supposed to fall is reassembled beneath them, and the question that has hung over Italy for more than 40 years still has no official answer. Not what happened. We know that now, but who will ever admit it? This was the untold record of Italy. If you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, subscribe. There are more. I'll see you in the next one.